The story unfolds within the confines of a homeowners association (HOA), a microcosm of suburban life often fraught with its own unique set of dramas and power dynamics. Our narrator, the protagonist of this tale, is a pragmatic and resourceful individual who happens to own a tow truck company. This detail, seemingly innocuous at the outset, becomes the linchpin of the entire narrative, the catalyst for a satisfyingly ironic twist. The setting is a typical residential neighborhood, complete with neatly manicured lawns, cookie-cutter houses, and the ever-present, often overbearing influence of the HOA. Within this environment, the narrator, like any other resident, simply wants to park his personal truck in his designated spot. He's not causing any trouble, not obstructing traffic, and certainly not violating any reasonable parking regulations. He's meticulous in his parking, ensuring that his truck is correctly positioned and doesn't encroach on anyone else's space. This responsible behavior, however, is about to be challenged by the story's antagonist, the HOA president. This particular HOA president, the bane of many residents' existence, is a caricature of entitlement and petty authority. He's the kind of person who thrives on enforcing rules, even the most trivial ones, often with a sense of self-importance that borders on the absurd. He views his position as HOA president not as a service to the community, but as a personal fiefdom, a platform from which to exert control and impose his will. He's known for his strict interpretations of the HOA bylaws, often using them as a weapon to target residents he dislikes or who simply rub him the wrong way. His reign is characterized by an overzealous pursuit of compliance, often focusing on minor infractions while overlooking more significant issues. He's the type who would measure the length of your grass with a ruler and issue fines for blades that are a millimeter too long. On this particular day, the HOA president's attention is drawn to the narrator's truck. For reasons known only to him, the president decides that the truck violates some obscure and likely non-existent HOA regulation. Perhaps it's the color, perhaps it's the model, or perhaps it's simply the fact that the president is having a bad day and needs to exert his power on someone. Whatever the reason, the president fixates on the truck, convinced that it's an affront to the meticulously ordered world he envisions for the HOA. He approaches the narrator, his demeanor radiating an air of self-righteous indignation. He informs the narrator that his truck is in violation of HOA rules and must be towed immediately. He doesn't bother to explain which specific rule is being violated, nor does he listen to the narrator's attempts to explain that the truck is perfectly legally parked. He's not interested in facts or logic. He's interested in asserting his authority. The narrator, taken aback by the president's aggressive approach, tries to reason with him. He points out that his truck is parked in his assigned spot, that it's not obstructing anyone, and that there's no legitimate reason to have it towed. He even offers to show the president the relevant HOA bylaws, but the president waves him off dismissively. The president, drunk on his perceived power, refuses to listen to reason. He interrupts the narrator, becoming increasingly belligerent and resorting to personal insults. He threatens the narrator with fines, liens, and other punitive actions, clearly relishing the opportunity to flex his muscles. He even goes so far as to call the police, hoping to use the authority of law enforcement to intimidate the narrator into compliance. This act, in itself, demonstrates the president's overreach. He's escalating a minor parking dispute into a legal matter, wasting valuable police resources on a petty power trip. The narrator, however, remains calm and composed throughout this ordeal. He understands that arguing with the president is a futile exercise. He recognizes the president's behavior for what it is, a desperate attempt to assert control and inflate his ego. He knows that he's in the right, that his truck is legally parked, and that the president's claims are baseless. He also knows something else, something that the president is completely unaware of. He owns the very tow company that the president is threatening to call. This knowledge gives the narrator a significant advantage, a trump card that he's about to play. He listens patiently to the president's tirade, allowing him to dig himself deeper into a hole of his own making. He waits for the perfect moment when the president's arrogance has reached its peak, before revealing his secret. He then calmly informs the president that he in fact owns the tow company. This revelation has a dramatic effect on the president. The air is immediately sucked out of his inflated ego. He's caught completely off guard, his carefully constructed facade of authority crumbling before his eyes. He stammers, his voice losing its earlier bravado. He backpedals, realizing the absurdity of his position. He's been trying to bully someone into submission, only to discover that he's dealing with the very person he was trying to intimidate. The irony of the situation is palpable. The president, who was so eager to wield his power, is now powerless. The narrator, on the other hand, holds all the cards. He could, if he chose to, tow the president's own car as an act of retribution. He could use his position as the owner of the tow company to make the president's life miserable. However, the narrator chooses a different path. He doesn't stoop to the president's level. He simply reiterates that his truck is legally parked and that the president's actions are unwarranted. He then walks away, leaving the president seething in frustration and humiliation. The incident serves as a powerful example of instant karma, where the entitled individual's own actions backfire spectacularly. It also highlights the importance of remaining calm and composed in the face of adversity, and the satisfaction of knowing you're in the right.
The moment the narrator reveals his ownership of the tow truck company marks a pivotal shift in the narrative. It's the point where the power dynamic flips, where the bully becomes the bullied, and where the story transcends a simple parking dispute to become a delicious tale of ironic justice. The HOA president, previously so confident in his authority, is suddenly rendered speechless, his carefully constructed persona of power and control shattered. The revelation lands like a bombshell, creating a palpable sense of stunned silence. The president's face, no doubt, flushes crimson, a mixture of embarrassment, anger, and disbelief warring within him. He's been so focused on asserting his dominance, so consumed by his own self-importance, that he completely overlooked the possibility that his target might possess a power of his own. He's been so busy playing the role of the enforcer that he failed to recognize the true power dynamic at play. The irony of the situation is thick enough to cut with a knife. The president, who was so eager to call the tow truck company to enforce his petty rules, is now face to face with the owner of that very company. He's been trying to intimidate someone with a threat that he unknowingly has no power to carry out. It's a classic case of poetic justice, where the perpetrator's own actions become the source of his downfall. The president, in his arrogance, has unwittingly walked into a trap of his own making. He's been so blinded by his desire to control others that he failed to see the control that the narrator possessed. He's so caught up in the minutiae of HOA regulations that he overlooked the bigger picture, the reality that the person he was trying to bully was actually in a position of power over him. The narrator, on the other hand, remains remarkably composed throughout this exchange. He doesn't gloat or revel in the president's humiliation. He simply delivers the information calmly and matter-of-factly, allowing the weight of the revelation to sink in. He understands the power of understatement, the impact of letting the president realize the full extent of his folly without rubbing his nose in it. The narrator's composure stands in stark contrast to the president's frantic and flustered demeanor. While the president is losing his cool, the narrator remains calm and collected, demonstrating a quiet confidence that underscores his true position of power. He's not interested in petty revenge or escalating the situation. He simply wants to establish the facts and put an end to the president's unwarranted harassment. The president's reaction is a study in human behavior. He stammers, his voice losing its earlier bravado. He tries to backtrack, to explain away his actions, but his words ring hollow. He's caught in a web of his own lies and exaggerations, unable to extricate himself. He's been so accustomed to being obeyed without question that he's completely unprepared for this turn of events. He's used to wielding his authority like a weapon, but now that weapon has been turned against him. He's been so focused on enforcing the rules that he forgot that the rules could also apply to him. He's so embarrassed and humiliated that he just wants the whole situation to disappear. The narrator, sensing the president's discomfort, chooses not to prolong the agony. He could, if he wanted, use his position as the tow truck owner to inflict further punishment on the president. He could tow the president's car, or he could refuse to tow the cars of the president's allies. He could even use his influence to have the president removed from his position on the HOA board. However, the narrator chooses a more dignified approach. He recognizes that the president has already been punished by the sheer irony of the situation. He understands that further humiliation would serve no real purpose. He simply reiterates that his truck is legally parked and that the president's actions are unwarranted. He then turns and walks away, leaving the president to stew in his own embarrassment. The narrator's decision not to seek further retribution speaks volumes about his character. It demonstrates his maturity and his understanding of true power. He doesn't need to resort to petty revenge to prove his point. He's already won the battle and he doesn't need to rub it in. His quiet dignity and composure are far more effective than any act of retaliation could have been. He leaves the president with a powerful lesson, that abusing power and treating others with disrespect will eventually come back to haunt you. The incident serves as a satisfying example of instant karma, where the entitled individual's own actions backfire spectacularly. It also highlights the importance of remaining calm and composed in the face of adversity, and the satisfaction of knowing you're in the right. The president's humiliation is complete, not because of any overt act of revenge, but because of the sheer irony of the situation and the narrator's dignified response. The aftermath of the parking lot showdown extends beyond the immediate embarrassment of the HOA president. While the immediate confrontation is over, the ripples of the incident continue to spread, impacting the dynamics of the HOA and offering a broader commentary on the pervasive nature of entitlement. The president, no doubt, retreats from the encounter a chastened figure, his inflated sense of authority deflated. He's been publicly exposed, his image as the strict enforcer tarnished by his own hypocrisy and overreach. The story likely becomes a topic of whispered conversations among the residents, a source of amusement and perhaps a cautionary tale. The president's fall from grace serves as a reminder that unchecked power and arrogance can lead to a spectacular downfall. It's a lesson in humility, albeit one that he may or may not fully absorb. The incident also highlights the absurdity of some HOA regulations and the often petty nature of their enforcement. The fact that the president was so fixated on a minor parking infraction, while seemingly oblivious to more pressing issues, speaks to the misplaced priorities that can sometimes plague these organizations. It underscores the need for common sense and reasonable judgment in the application of rules, rather than a rigid adherence to technicalities. The story serves as a reminder that HOAs should exist to serve the community, not to provide a platform for individuals to exert their own personal agendas. It raises questions about the balance between maintaining order and stifling individual expression, and the potential for abuse of power within these seemingly innocuous neighborhood associations. The narrator's response to the situation is also noteworthy. He doesn't seek revenge or exploit his newfound advantage. He chooses instead to rise above the pettiness and demonstrate a level of composure that the president clearly lacks. His actions suggest that true power lies not in wielding authority over others, but in maintaining one's dignity and composure in the face of adversity. He understands that the most effective way to disarm a bully is not to stoop to their level, but to expose their weakness through calm and reasoned action. His quiet confidence and refusal to engage in petty retaliation speak volumes about his character. The story resonates because it taps into a universal experience, dealing with entitled individuals. We've all encountered people who believe they are somehow superior, who feel entitled to special treatment, and who use their perceived authority to impose their will on others. The HOA president, in this context, becomes a symbol of this type of person, a caricature of entitlement that we can all recognize and relate to. The narrator's triumph over the president, therefore, becomes a vicarious victory for all of us who have ever had to deal with such individuals. It's a satisfying reminder that bullies don't always win, and that sometimes the most effective way to defeat them is simply to expose their weaknesses and walk away. Beyond the immediate conflict, the story offers a broader commentary on the nature of power and the importance of humility. It suggests that true power lies not in external authority or social status, but in inner strength and self-control. The president, despite his position of authority within the HOA, ultimately proves to be powerless in the face of the narrator's calm and reasoned approach. His reliance on petty rules and intimidation tactics reveals a fundamental insecurity and a need to assert control over others. The narrator, on the other hand, demonstrates a quiet confidence that stems from his understanding of his own worth and his refusal to be drawn into the president's petty power games. The story also serves as a reminder that we should all be mindful of our own behavior and avoid the trap of entitlement. It's easy to fall into the trap of believing that we are somehow special or deserving of preferential treatment. The HOA president, in his own way, is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ego and the importance of treating others with respect. His downfall serves as a reminder that even those who seem to be in positions of power are not immune to the consequences of their actions. Ultimately, the story of the HOA president and the tow truck owner is a simple but powerful parable about the nature of power, the importance of humility, and the enduring appeal of poetic justice. It's a story that resonates with us because it speaks to our own experiences with entitlement and our desire for a world where fairness and justice prevail.